bow out because I know life goes on. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to try to make anybody stay to talk to me.
Well, what were some of your books from this year, man?
I think that, let's see. So, Terror Mannequin by Douglas Hackle was in the top 10, which is actually a book that was published this year, right? But most of the books that I put in my top 10 were not books that were actually published this year. I think the number one was Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Have you ever read that?
Ken actually mentioned Junji Ito, No Longer Human, earlier.
Yeah, it's actually an adaptation of a novel. I don't know if you ever read No Longer Human, but
No.
That's a really great novel, and Junji Ito did a manga adaptation of it. And it is a little bit out of character since No Longer Human is it's a realist novel, so it's not horror.
Okay.
Despite that cover.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I've never read anything else by Junji Ito other than Uzumaki. So I mean, is Uzumaki the pinnacle, or is that just more of the same? I mean, does he perform at that level for everything else that you've read by him, or have you read much?
That's my favorite long form work by him. I think my favorite works are his short stories.
Okay.
He has one with a recurring character named Tomi, who's like she's an evil girl who like seduces men and then eventually gets them to kill her, but she's immortal.
Okay, nice. So you would recommend definitely that I continue to try to acquire additional Junji Ito?
Yeah, definitely. You can find a lot of his short work online. I would especially recommend, like a lot of people's gateway into him is his short work, The Enigma of Amigara Fault.
Okay. All right, I'll have to take a look because I mean I was, extremely impressed with the Uzumaki. I mean, I think that was was my number one read of the year. I think. Yeah, I mean it was. I'm looking at it right now. So then, other ones that I had on my list. Let's just go through them. Let the Old Dreams Die by a person's whose name I can't pronounce. John Vidi Lindquist or something to that effect. The guy that wrote Let the Right One In. Has anybody read that one?
I haven't.
That's one that's been on my dang list like forever.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, Light the Right One In is great, but I liked this collection better than I did the novel. I think it was just a matter of there's so many great ideas in it. And I mean the novel is good, but this had just a lot of really cool stories in it. And then a Russian novel by a pair of like a husband and wife team called Vida Nostra. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
No, it was good. It was kind of like a woman or a girl being initiated into some kind of a secretive boarding school kind of thing to teach her how to kind of manipulate reality. It's a real kind of bizarre read. It was very good.
That sounds fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it was really pretty good, and it's a Russian novel in translation. So part of the appeal of it is the cultural differences. It kind of adds to the fantasy elements. It's really pretty cool. Then Terror Mannequin by Douglas Hackles. Anybody read that one?
Working on it.
Yeah, that's good. It's really good.
And funniest Douglas Hackle book I've ever read was Greatest.
Clown Tear Chunk. Yeah.
No, this was actually after that one. Greatest Shark Attack Ever.
I like this one better than the gayest man to ever die in a shark attack or whatever it was. I like this one better than that one. That one's good. I enjoyed that, but I think this one's better.
Okay.
Let's see. Then Stirring the Sheets by Chad Lutsky. Has anybody read that?
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah, that's really good.
I read that this year, actually.
Skullface Boy it ended at just the right time. I also got of Foster Homes and Flies recently. That guy's a great up and comer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's a great writer.
I was divided on that one. I wasn't I liked it, but I was kind of little iffy on it for some reason.
The ending tells us all we need to know without going into too much backstory to ruin it. We know
the foster home one, you mean?
No, Skullface Boy. We know the last scene. We know what happens at the end of his journey. To go any further than that would open up too many more doors.
I agree.
The right time.
But I think, Zach, you were saying the foster home one was the one you were iffy on, right?
No, the Stirring the Sheets one.
Oh, the Stirring the Sheets one. Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, I liked all of them. I didn't read them all this year, right? But Stirring the Sheets made my top 10. But I mean, I think that I like Skullface Boy. I think better than Stirring the Sheets. And the Foster Home and Flies. I mean, I think Skullface Boy was. Yeah, like you see. Yeah, I agree with your assessment there, Jeremy. I mean, it ended at exactly the right spot, and it ended in a way that I found to be unexpected and fulfilling, at the same time. So it was really good. Mm-hmm. So what else here? Let's see. I made a top 12 list, actually. Blackheart Boys Choir by Curtis M.
I
Lawson.
had that one on mine too. That one ruled.
Yeah, that's a really good book.
Zach mentioned it earlier. Yeah, it's the unicorn on the cover actually looks pretty sinister.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, that's a really good book, and it's certainly the subject matters is risky, which also makes it adds to the quality of the read, or the excitement, I guess, of reading it, because it is kind of something, and I'm sure that would make people feel icky or uncomfortable while they're reading it.
I'm surprised that it was received as well as it was in the small press kind of horror review circle, like all the tons of reviewers out there. I was expecting them to react negatively, but they didn't, which really
I mean, there has been a couple things that I've seen, right, where people have reacted in much the way you would think they might react to it, but overwhelmingly it's been pretty positive, so I was pretty surprised. And then Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's a really good book. The Room by Jonas Carlson. I'd never heard of this person before this year, but The Room is a really good book. Has anybody else heard of that?
No, I'm sure it's nothing to do with Tommy Wiseau.
That's the joke.
No, it's just like I think he's a Swedish author, and it's a short novel. It's probably a novella length about this office worker who finds this room that he may or may not be the only person to be able to actually access this particular small office in this building, and accessing the office seems to really greatly help his career out. But you'd have to read it. It's really good. It's really the main character is it's written from the main character's perspective, and he's really kind of like an arrogant prick, but it's really quite good. It's called The Room by Jonas Carlson. But I recommend that one for sure. It's really quick read, easy to get through, and very peculiar. And then we've got Wise Blood by Flannery O'Connor. Has anybody read that?
I haven't read that one. That's her only novel, right?
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's definitely. I recommend that. I'd recommend reading that one. Yeah, and then go ahead.
I've read some of her short stories, like Good Country Folks and A Good Man Is Hard to Find, but I haven't read Wise Blood yet.
Yeah, I like. I mean, I love all of her stuff. I love all of her short stories, and then this novel's great. I was kind of a little bit apprehensive. I didn't know what she'd do with the novel, but she does a great job. It's a fantastic book. A lot of the same themes and everything, and it expands out to a novel just fine. So it doesn't get dry or dull or anything. It's as the characters are as complicated and weird and kind of morbid or whatnot, or kind of freakish in a way. It's really good. And then Black Gum by J. David Osborne. I made my list. Has anybody read of that?
Yeah. I feel like that was The last good one that Osborne wrote, or maybe it was the last one of his recent stuff that I've read, but the way he originally talked about the plot of Black Gum, like before he had finished writing it,
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting something a bit more grandiose. Because he talked about it when I interviewed him once, and I don't know. I get the feeling that he had to cut a lot of stuff to make it, readable. Maybe he wanted too much,
Yeah, I mean, I liked the stripped down prose style. That's one of the things I really liked about it, was just how tight and clean it was. The story was good, obviously, too, but I mean, I just liked I was really impressed with the prose style.
Yeah, as far as the stripped down thing, he's the only author that, for me, it's like for sure worked. Like the only thing I've read by him was Low Down, Death Ride Easy, and that was like one of my main things I took away from it. That he took that minimalistic writing and it just fit the story perfectly.
Right.
Yeah, I have Black Gum on my shelf, but I haven't read it yet. I do know that he's had at least one sequel for it, so maybe that's what it was. He originally intended it to be just one book, but decided to divide it up.
Yeah, that could be the case. I mean, I would recommend picking it up. I mean, you'd finish it in a sitting or two. It's pretty good. And then I've got American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. I've not read that until this year. Have you guys read it? I'm thinking you probably have.
Yeah, you know what the most disturbing scene to me with that one is when he stabs the kid at the aquarium who's playing hide and seek with his mom, and she's like, "Oh, I think I found you," and then she goes to scare him, and she sees him like taking his last breaths as his throat's been slit.
Yeah.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, that was.
Go
ahead.
Well, I was gonna say it does have disturbing parts, but I remember like the funny parts of it more, like the parts where he's making dirty phone calls to women, and he describes his job to them while making pig noises, and that's his idea of a dirty phone call to them.
Right.
And then but when he calls one woman who just responds to him with, "Dad, is that you?" He talks about how he just loses his erection and stops.
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised at how funny the book was. I didn't expect it to be as humorous as it was. And I also didn't expect to be actually shocked by some of the stuff that happens in it, right? I mean, I've read quite a bit of horror and crazy stuff, but it does really go over the top in such a way that I was pleasantly surprised, and that it went as far as it did, because it genuinely did, make me feel uncomfortable at spots, so.
Yeah, and there are parts that are like kind of a mix of it. Like there's a part where he's on a date with a woman he used to know from college or something like that, and he gives her a poem, and it says she read it out loud, and the poem is something like, "Take the darkie and nail it to the door. Nail the darkie to the door. The black man is the devil."
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Doesn't he feed her a urinal cake and say that it was like a gourmet dessert or something too, and she believed it? Yeah.
I don't know if it's her. I think he does that with
he does it with somebody. Yeah.
No, that's the woman. Like he later takes her back and cuts out her tongue and fucks her blood-filled mouth.
Yeah. That book is pretty amazing. And then the number 2 I've got is The Sea of Ash by Scott Thomas. Has anybody read that?
I haven't read that. No.
It's somewhat of I think it falls into the Lovecraftian weird fiction type of genre, but it's a extremely well done, tight, well constructed story. So it's like a novella length. But I definitely recommend that if you like that type of thing. I like the Lovecraftian stuff. In general, I like the idea of it more often than I like some of it comes off as very stuffy or whatever. And I thought going into this one, it might be, kind of a stuffy, dry read, but it's not. It's really quite entertaining and imaginative, and it's really quite good. So it's called The Sea of Ash by Scott Thomas. And then the number one I had was Uzumaki that we already talked about.
Now, I thought you had Girl Like a Bomb on your list too, didn't you?
No, I did like it, but it didn't make the list. It probably would have had a better chance had it been better edited. But the editing.
Who put that one out? Was it Clash?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember there being any like egregious editing errors in it. And
well, see, I read the Kindle version. Did you read a paperback?
No, but I did have a ARC from Clash.
Was it a PDF?
I think so.
So you might have had, if it was a PDF, you might not have seen the issues that I had with the Kindle version. The Kindle version, and this is the most egregious editing problem that I saw with it, was that there was several different points in the story where the header or the footer that talks about the author's name and the page count is just slapped in the middle of a paragraph, right? It'll say Autumn Christian page 120, right in the middle of the page or whatever in the Kindle edition. So that happened like several times, 3 or 4 different times, which I find annoying and unprofessional. And then, there was other editing issues that I would have probably not even cared about, you know what I mean? But that kind of thing really gets on my nerves when I see that type of sloppiness and the quality control, so.
Yeah, I don't know if you were listening earlier, but Girl Like a Bomb was my number one. Was tied with Cody Goodfellow's On America for number one.
What was the other one?
On America by Cody Goodfellow.
Okay, yeah, I've not read anything by him yet, but he's on my list. Now, I did like Girl Like a Bomb. It would definitely be one of those books I think that would have made a great book club kind of discussion, right? You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like the authorial intent is kind of like what is it that she was actually trying to get across, right? In the story, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It was very good. It was very entertaining, very well written. I just, the editing of it is one of the main things that kept it out of the top 10 or top 12 or whatever, along with another book by Clash that was put out. I'm not just here to beat up on a small publishing house, but what is it? Nightmares and Ecstasy. Have you guys read that?
No, I'm not familiar with that. Who wrote that?
Brendan Vedito, I think is his name.
Yeah, have you read it?
I haven't read it yet, but I have a copy of it. He did give me a very nice review of my my first novel.
Yeah, I mean it was a really good book. All the short stories were really, it was just like right up my alley. All the stories are great. It also had some editing problems as well. They just need a better proofreader essentially. So
yeah, or just for whoever formats the Kindle books, because I read the PDFs for their paperbacks and they look fine to me.
Oh, you're talking about for the Girl Like a Bomb, but the other one had some editing issues as well. It wasn't not into the as bad as the Girl Like a Bomb. And the thing is, if anybody's listening to this now, somebody might have complained about this to the Clash at some point in time, right? They might have fixed the problems that I'm talking about, so I don't know. So, but I would definitely recommend both books. So. Just because they didn't come into the top 12 doesn't mean I'm saying that they're not worth reading, right? But they were both very good.
Yeah,
Flicker was my number one, and I know you agree that one was.
Oh yeah, that made it into my top 10 of the decade. Mm-hmm. Because I read that years back, but that definitely made it in the top 10 of the decade. Yeah, for sure.
What was your number one for the decade?
Let me take a look. Hold on a second.
Because I have no idea what I would be my number one for the decade. I don't think I even got a Goodreads until like 2011, 2012.
Yeah, I actually had Goodreads for the past decade. So let me take a look real quick, because I did put it out there in a. Let's see.
And I actually didn't realize until later that I didn't start my my reading log, my writing log, which is where I started taking writing seriously. I didn't make that until 2012.
All right, let me take a look here. What do I got? Top 10. I didn't rank them, the top 10 of the decade, right? So I'll just go over with Uzumaki was one of them, right? Let's see. The Children's Hospital. Have anybody read that by Chris Adrian?
I haven't read that, no.
It's a really fat, crazy postmodernist novel that takes place in a children's hospital that kind of inadvertently becomes like a Noah's Ark on God's second flood, right? So this children's hospital gets, set adrift in this giant endless sea, right? Because God has flooded the earth a second time, and it's all these different characters interacting with each other inside the super high-tech children's hospital, and it's absolutely nuts. It's a really good book.
I like that. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and Uzumaki was one. Let me see what else. We've Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, which I'm sure somebody on this call has probably read, right?
I've been meaning to read that, but I haven't read it yet.
I mean, have you read Hill House?
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah, it is a good book. This one's better in my opinion, so I would recommend it.
Yeah, and I really like her short stories too.
Yeah. Well, no, wait. I don't know if I've read any of her short stories. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I've only.
The Lottery is her most famous one.
Yeah, if I've read that, it's been like a long time ago. So I'm not 100% sure that I've read that. It
Probably
might.
in school.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely recommend We've Always Lived in the Castle. If you liked Hill House, I personally think it's better. I think it's structurally more sound. I don't know. I think overall it's better. Summer House with Swimming Pool by Herman Koch. Has anybody read that?
I don't know.
Don't think so.
It's a good. I don't know what to say about it, but it's a good book. It's very creepy. It's one of those things where it's like all the characters are kind of icky, disgusting people, but you're still compelled to read the book, right? It's good. Let's see. The Thicket by Joe R. Lansdale. Has anyone read that? No.
What's it called?
The Thicket by Joe R. Lansdale.
No, I haven't read that one yet. Is that one of his horror novels or a crime?
It's a Western, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured he likes Westerns too.
Is it kind of in the same vein as his other Western, The Magic Wagon?
It's better than that, way better than that. The Magic Wagon actually is maybe one of my least favorite Lansdale books, even though it's a decent one, right? I mean, I like pretty much anything Lansdale writes, but the Magic Wagon is probably, lower down on my list.
It wasn't really my favorite either.
Yeah, The Thicket's pretty great. Let's see, The Throne of Bones by Brian McNaughton. Has anyone read that?
No.
That's a fantastic book. It's kind of written in a somewhat antiquated style, in the vein of like what is it, a Clark Ashton Smith or something type of style, if I'm remembering right, as far as a close analog, right? But it was written in like the 90s, I think, or maybe early 2000s.
Who's the author again?
It's Brian McNaughton. And it's a short story collection, but it's kind of more like a mosaic novel. All the short stories are intertwined, take place in the same universe. Characters will pop up from one story into another or be mentioned. It's all very closely intertwined, and it's the main theme or the main type of creature that it deals with as far as building a mythos around is the creature of the ghoul. And it's a fantastic exploration of the ghoul concept and expansion of it. He takes that premise and runs with it and just totally fleshes out this crazy world and mythology around the ghoul, and it's got really dark humor, and it's written, and it's beautifully written, and it's very complex. It's got a brilliant juxtaposition of very like a high art and low art type of combination that I really like. I mean, I highly recommend it. I especially recommend the audiobook version of it, The Throne of Bones. It's a great book. And then two on my list of the decade are Haruki Murakami books, Killing Commendatore. I'm not even saying that. You know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's Killing Commendatore, and then 1Q84. Has anyone read any of Haruki Murakami stuff?
1Q84. That sounds familiar. That's it's got the bald chick on the front or something, right?
Well, I mean, it's possible, right? I mean, there's probably various different covers, right? But it's the version that I read. I think it's just got just giant letters and numbers on it, right? With a woman's face in the background, but it doesn't appear that she's bald necessarily. But
yeah, I'm looking at my copy of 1Q84 now. I haven't read it yet, but I've had it for a while. I haven't read Haruki Murakami, but
I'm aware of Murakami.
Yeah, I know he's very popular.
Well, yeah, I mean, if
I've read I did put a Ryu Murakami book on my top 10 in the miso soup.
Which one?
In the miso soup.
Okay, I've not read that. Now, I'm not sure. I think I've read a book by him.
Audition, possibly.
No. Something about a mask, or maybe I'm thinking maybe I'm getting mixed up with a different guy.
Was it called Confessions of a Mask?
Something like that, yeah.
That's Yukio Mishima, who I'd also put on my list.
Okay, all right, yeah. That was a really good book, but yeah, I don't think I've read Ryu yet, but it's on my list of things to read. But I would recommend Haruki Murakami. I would recommend if I mean, 1Q84 I definitely would recommend. However, if you don't own a Haruki Murakami book and you want to see if you like it, I would recommend you pick up After Dark, which is short, just so you can sample it, right? It's also kind of more in line with, like, say, the horror genre. It's kind of like a surreal horror type of book, and it's only a few 200 pages. But 1Q84 is great. And also Flicker, which is on that list as well, and that would definitely be one that would be highly placed. That's a fantastic book. And then Wraiths of the Broken Land by C. Craig Zahler.
Yeah,
that's Craig Zahler, rather. Has anybody read that?
No, but I've seen Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah, I saw it too.
Now, yeah. I mean, Bone Tomahawk was adapted from that, right?
No, it wasn't adapted from this, but somebody seems like somebody's told me recently that they made this into a movie or going to, Race of the Broken Land, but I don't think it's a movie yet.
Someone connected with Bone Tomahawk. It may have been Craig Zahler directed that new Puppet Master movie, didn't they?
Yeah, he wrote it. He wrote the screenplay for that Puppet Master movie, which was pretty good.
Oh, yeah, the right.
I'm in the minority. I wasn't too big on that one.
Well, I mean, I wasn't expecting much either, right, from a Puppet Master
movie. He grabs the Hitler doll. He grabs the Hitler puppet, and he opens the oven door and says, "See how you like it," and chucks him in.
I mean, it's...
But yeah, it looks like the writer-director of Bone Tomahawk wrote that, and I had no idea that Raw Dog Screaming was the one who put that out.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's really good. It's a really good... It's a Western, but...
Yeah, Bone Tomahawk rules.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good. I would highly recommend it to folks. I think I would imagine that anybody on this podcast or whatnot would like it. It's gritty, dark, humorous. It's pretty messed up. It's really quite good. Yeah. So that's those are my list. Top 10 reads of the decade and my top 12 reads of the last 12 months.
Impeccable taste, sir.
Thank you much. Thank you.
I I do think that some of these boys need to get to bed, or they have work or school in the morning, right, guys?
Well, I'm off work until
I'm on Christmas
second.
break.
Oh, okay.
You don't tell me what to do, Dad.
But I mean, if you need to jump or whatever, if anybody does, that's fine. I mean, obviously I'm joining late, so I
had a feeling you would be here later,
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's about at the 11th hour, kind of later, So
yeah, I didn't realize, but we've been at this for 5 hours, and officially we hit the 5 hour mark 2 minutes ago.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Now, somebody asked me last week if it got cut off, because it was coming in like 2 hours later than where it began. No, that's just the videos. When they reach a certain length, they process slow, and so it takes longer for the first 2 hours it takes longer for the video to show its full length because it's still processing. So it gets the first 2 hours, the last 2 hours first is what it does. So anybody, and I know we don't have many people at all watching this, but anybody who watches it back who wonders about that, that's what's going on. So,
right. So one book that I did read recently that I thought was good was The Story of the Why. And that was it was quite a bit different than what I thought it would be. I thought it would be more like I don't know. I thought it would be more like making up more fake details around the mystery, right? Rather than a gonzo road story. But I'm not disappointed because it was very entertaining, right? But I thought it would be less bizarro, I guess, than it was. Like I thought it would be more of like a mystery, right? And that the looking for the Burkhart guy would be the more of the central focus, whereas that seemed to be not so much the central focus of it. But I guess I'm talking to the author, so I don't know what I'm really trying to get at. But has everybody read this aside from Ben? I'm sure he's read it.
It's fucking hack shit.
I actually was expecting more bizarro elements.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I read an earlier draft because the stuff that it says in the synopsis I didn't pick up on, and maybe I need to give it another shot.
Yeah, I can always send you the final draft of it.
That may be what I need, because I don't remember a church with infinite space or whatever.
That was
always part of it.
Was it? Okay, well, maybe I was just out of it then. I don't know. Sorry.
No, but I thought it was highly entertaining and also very fast paced, and it had a lot of crazy inventive stuff that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting something a bit different, right? Because I think maybe I was expecting something a little bit different because of the fact that, Ben, you say you've got a book coming out with the Anderson Prunty Press at Atlatl, right? So I thought it would be a little bit more somewhat rooted in reality, I guess, than it was, but I mean, I just read Slag Attack by Anderson Prunty, right? So I'm not like opposed to any, so I'm not opposed to that type of thing, right? But it was very, very good. And one thing that I thought was interesting about it was like, and maybe this is a stylistic thing that's just your own style, or if it was a style for the book itself, like this particular piece, that it was all written in very simple declarative sentences. Was that like a conscious choice, or do you know even what I'm talking about when I say that?
Yeah, that was a conscious choice for this book. I wanted it to have like no superfluous words at all. I wanted it to be very very simple and straightforward, so the images could be focused on, and big influence on that was a guy whose book another book of whose that I'm reading now, James Elroy, especially The Cold 6000. That was a huge influence on that style.
Okay, so James Elroy, you say?
Yeah.
See, I've not read anything by him, so he's got a similar style to that. Or,
yeah. Especially.
And what's the book that you said? What, The Cold 6000?
Yeah, that's it's a very long book, but it's all written like that, and it's about the mafia and the FBI being involved in the assassination of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy.
Oh, nice. Okay. Take a look at that because I liked that style. I mean, it was definitely noticeable, right? I mean, it was, but I didn't find it distracting. And I thought it was, I definitely noticed it, and it seemed like it had to have been intentional, right? And I was just curious about it. So, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And all lit authors like Sam Pink and Zachary German were a big influence on that as well.
Yeah, I've read some Sam Pink. I've enjoyed what I have read by him. Who was the other individual you mentioned?
Zachary German. He only has one book that I know of called Eat When You Feel Sad.
Okay, I've not heard of that.
Which is all written like that. It's a very strange book because you would think it would be the most boring thing because it practically reads like a diary with how it talks about someone's everyday life. But I actually found it really compelling. And I actually realized the reason years later when I took a class, an online class where J. David Osborne was teaching, and I used that style, and he said, well, it works because the main character is depressed, and when you're depressed, it feels like everything you do is just, a list of things you do. So that kind of very beige prose is very appropriate for that. But I also think it works in like a adventure novel, like The Story of a Lie.
Right. Yeah, it keeps it moving. You also wrote it in present tense too, which also helps.
Yeah, I had a couple people tell me I should try to turn it into a script or something.
Have you ever had anyone tell you not to write in present tense? Like my last novel, they made me change the whole novel from present tense to past tense before it was published.
No, but one of the publishers I did send it to told me to try to change it to first person, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, God, it took forever.
Yeah, that would be annoying. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are people who truly and deeply hate present tense, right? I mean, I think it just depends on the editor that you'd be working with or the reader or whatever. I mean, I think people really hate present tense, or some people do, right? Or a lot of people hate first person, and a lot of people really truly hate first person present tense.
If you think about it, though, I mean, there's never a moment unless you're directly speaking to the reader, if you're to read it like that, perhaps, but otherwise there's never any point where you would be writing present tense on paper, other than feelings, because you're thinking back to past. Everything it's immediately in the past, whatever you're drawing upon,
right. I think that people think it's unnatural, Yeah. But I don't mind it. I mean, I don't have any strong feelings against it or for it. I think it's fine to write. And I mean, I've written some things that are in present tense. Sometimes the story calls for it, So. Yeah, it didn't bother me in the least, or I like it. And it also does seem to, propel the story along. Zach, do you like present tense? Do you have any feelings one way or another about it?
I actually feel that it's more natural. That might just be because that's how I write. Like I actually have to make myself write past tense. But I mean, present tense. I just think it's more right because the story's moving along. It's like it didn't. I guess I really haven't thought about it that much. It just seems natural to me.
Yeah. Have you ever read like anything that was in future tense? I've seen some like short stories that kind of do that.
No, I don't think I have.
I've seen some like short stories and poems that do that, but I've never seen like a novel or anything that's written entirely in future tense. I assume that probably would get somewhat tedious.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be
like
tedious.
so will do this and then they will do that or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
God,
It seems a
imagine
bit
writing a
gimmicky.
whole novel like that.
Yeah. It seems like it'd be kind of gimmicky for a novel, right?
Yeah, I've written like some poems that are like that, like what I will do and things like
Right,
that.
right.
And I think it might work for that, but it probably would get tedious for like a whole novel.
I
But
mean, I think it would work, for like a serial killer kind of short story or something. Somebody planning on murdering folks or something like that would work at future tense, I would think, right?
Wait, going back to the president thing, I'm thinking like it seems like if you're doing third person narration, present tense would be the right thing to do because like when you're watching a movie, it's not like past tense, like it's happening as it goes along.
But you have to sit down to write it. See, if you're recalling something that happened to you, you're not writing while it's happening to you. See,
But you're not writing about something that happened to you. You're writing like a third person story with different characters.
Well, yeah. Me personally, as far as the past present tense argument, me personally, I've always been a fan of the what do they call it, the book as artifact device. I like that where it's some document or whether it's diary or it's different documents forming a narrative.
Yeah, like what they call it, epistolary.
Yeah, I've always thought that device's book as artifact was the most realistic and plausible way of presenting a story. If you wanted to
I dislike that the most. That's like my pet peeve. Is diary like stories written in diaries or newspaper clippings or whatever the case may be. It seems like it's found footage type of literary equivalent of found footage. I can't stand it.
Well, it has drawbacks too. You can't. It's not.
It's because they always have these things where these guys are like, oh, and somebody's at the door right now, right? I mean, come on, man. Nobody's.
Lovecraft was bad for that.
I mean, nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
But the Prestige, that's a great book, and that's like an exception to the rule as far as my pet peeves goes. You guys read the Prestige?
I haven't read that one, no.
No, I mean that's a excellent epistolary novel or whatnot, where like what you're reading is the primary focus of the narrative, right? I mean, it's the actual document that you're reading is what the entire story is about. It's really well done. So I'd recommend The Prestige. That's a great book. Christopher Priest. You probably maybe have seen the movie, but the book is far superior because the fact that it's a book is integral to the experience, right? I mean, they did a good job of adapting it, but the book is great.
Yeah, James Ellroy, he'll write most of the book in a straightforward narrative, but he'll have these inserts which are like newspaper clippings and pick clippings from magazines and things like that in the middle of chapters. I think that's an interesting device to use it.
I can take that, and I can take it or leave it. Right. Sometimes it's like that night film, I think is what it was.
Yeah, it was on my list.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I thought I didn't like the fake documents in that. I didn't think it was well done. I didn't think it added to the story. I think you could have cut all that stuff out and it would have made no real difference, in my opinion. But I also read Flicker, and Night Film, in my opinion, is a low rent version of Flicker. So,
yeah. Have you ever read Pale Fire by Nabokov?
No.
That's an interesting book. It's divided into 3 parts. It's an introduction, and then there's a poem, and then the actual like narrative of the book is end notes for the poem.
Okay.
Like the entire story is told through the end notes to this poem.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not read that. Now, I know I'm in the minority when it comes to not liking epistolary narratives, right? I don't like metafiction either, so I'm not trying to be disparaging against anybody's preferences when I say that, but I'm just saying those are my pet peeves. So Pale Fire by Nabokov.
Yeah,
I've written it down.
Yeah, the same guy who wrote Lolita.
Right.
I actually like Pale Fire better than Lolita.
Yeah, I've not read Lolita. I've not read anything by Nabokov. But a buddy of mine swears by it, so it's on my list. I've got a big list.
You'd be hard pressed to find a Russian novel that doesn't weigh in at like 500 or 600 pages. I've found.
Yeah, but I can't remember. Did Nabokov was Russian, but didn't he? He was an immigrant, and I'm pretty sure he wrote primarily in English, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he wrote it in English.
Guys, it's been fascinating, but there is a but. The storm is really starting to pick up here. I think I just saw that arc of the sick kids float by.
Oh, really? Oh, really? The Children's Hospital?
Yeah. So I'm probably going to cut it here.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Yeah, we've been going for almost 5
We should end it by showing that zoo books with the seal thing again.
Well,
yeah, let's end on that. I
was actually going to close with